In the land of frost and stone, where dragons once ruled and the gods still whisper through the wind, a new storm rises. Not from the sky, but from the hearts of men. Skyrim is at war with itself. Not against Daedra, not against outsiders, but brother against brother. Blade against oath. Empire against faith. It began with a shout, a single voice echoing through the throne room of Solitude, and ending with a king's lifeless body on cold stone. Ulfric Stormcloak called it justice. The Empire called it murder, and the Nords were forced to choose. Solitude, proud and loyal to the ruby throne. Windhelm, ancient and unyielding in its cry for freedom. Now snow falls not in silence, but in judgment. Cities choose sides, families are divided, and in the center of it all stands you. Because war has not yet come, but its breath is on the back of Skyrim's neck. This is the story of how it started. Before the battles, before the blood. Welcome to Tales of Tamriel. Subscribe and hear the echoes before the storm. The death of a high king. It didn't start with a war, it started with a shout. The throne room of Solitude, once a place of ceremony and order, became a silent tomb the moment Ulfric Stormcloak opened his mouth. He had come not as a rebel, but as a Nord, a Thane, a veteran of the Great War, a man who once bled for the Empire, and now stood before its crown. High King Torrig was young, noble, hopeful. He admired Ulfric. Some say he even welcomed him. Others say he never had a choice. But when Ulfric spoke the ancient tongue of the dragons, when he unleashed the Thu'um, everything changed. The shout struck like lightning wrapped in language. The king fell, and the hall fell silent. Some say Ulfric acted with honor, that he invoked the ancient right of challenge, that Torrig accepted, that the gods themselves heard the duel. Others call it murder, a political assassination masked in tradition, a calculated move, not of faith, but of fire. The truth? It doesn't matter, because the echo of that shout was louder than any truth. It carried through the mountains, through taverns and temples, through soldier camps and family homes, and with it came a question: whose Skyrim is this? To the loyalists of Solitude, Ulfric was a traitor. To his followers in Windhelm, he was a liberator. But to most Nords, he was a choice they could no longer avoid, because that single moment shattered more than stone. It broke the illusion that Skyrim was whole. Torrig's body was still warm when the cities began to shift. Whiterun closed its gates, Dawnstar armed its militia. Falkreath whispered of rebellion. The Empire watched and hesitated. Jarl Elisif the Fair, widow of Torrig, was elevated as regent, young, untested, and wrapped in mourning. She wore the crown, but it was the Empire that held the sword. General Tullius was dispatched to keep order, or, if needed, restore it by force. Meanwhile, Ulfric returned to Windhelm, not hiding, but rising. He declared Solitude a puppet, the Empire a corpse, and Talos a god betrayed. To many, he was the voice of Skyrim's forgotten soul, a call back to the old ways when Nords ruled themselves, and the gods spoke with thunder, not treaties. To others, he was the spark that would ignite civil collapse, a man driven not by honor, but by ego. But one thing was clear: he had acted, and no one else had. The Moot did not vote. The Jarls were divided, and Skyrim, the ancient land of warriors and kings, stood on the edge of something it hadn't seen in generations: war from within. Some argue that Torrig's death was inevitable. that the tension between the Empire and Skyrim had been building since the signing of the White Gold Concordat. That banning Talos worship was the true betrayal, and Ulfric merely lit the fuse. Others say it was preventable, that Torygg, given time, could have united the Jarls, could have healed the rift, could have led Skyrim into a new age. But time ran out, and in that vacuum the voice of one man shattered the balance of a nation. A voice that spoke not just in the tongue of dragons, but in the language of revolution. Solitude and the Empire. Solitude was never built for war, it was built for order. Perched high on the arching cliffs of Hafingar, it stands apart, a city of stone and sky, watching the sea of ghosts with quiet pride. It is the seat of culture, diplomacy, law. And now, loyalty under siege. After the death of High King Torygg, Solitude became more than the capital of Skyrim. It became the last stronghold of imperial rule in the north. Jarl Elisif the Fair, young and newly widowed, was crowned regent in a time when crowns meant little. Her voice was soft, but her presence became a symbol, not of weakness, but of continuity, of Skyrim's last thread of stability. She did not cry for vengeance, she did not shout, she stood, and behind her stood the Empire. From the south came General Tullius, hardened by the Great War, tasked not with conquest but containment, to keep Skyrim from tearing itself apart, to hold Solitude firm while the rest of the holds leaned toward rebellion. But the truth is, Solitude was never truly free to choose, bound by alliance, bound by treaties, bound by the ghost of a greater war that never truly ended. The White Gold Concordat, signed years earlier with the Aldmeri Dominion, still haunted the halls of the Blue Palace. Its most hated clause, the banning of Talos worship, a god born of man, born of Skyrim, born of blood. To the Nords, this was heresy. To the Thalmor, it was justice. To the Empire, it was survival. Solitude chose survival. And in doing so, it became the focus of Ulfric Stormcloak's fury, not because of hatred for Elisif, but because of what her city represented: compliance. Ulfric did not see a mourning widow, he saw a puppet on an imperial string. But to many in Skyrim, especially those who had seen what the Thalmor could do, the Empire's presence in Solitude was not tyranny, it was protection. From war, from chaos, from something worse than divided provinces, another Oblivion crisis. Solitude's people remained loyal not out of fear, but out of memory. They remembered the war against the Dominion, they remembered what it cost, and they understood that Skyrim alone would not survive another one. So while Windhelm shouted about freedom, Solitude held its breath, reinforced its gates, listened carefully for the footsteps of rebellion. The Legion patrolled the streets, the diplomats spoke in circles, and Elisif, ever graceful, ever silent, watched the kingdom slip through her fingers. Some say she lacked the fire of a true ruler. Others say her strength was the kind that didn't need to shout. She honored her husband, she followed the law, and she believed that unity could still be preserved. But belief does not stop swords, and loyalty, once questioned, spreads like frostbite. Jarls across Skyrim began to shift their allegiance. Some joined Ulfric openly, others whispered support behind closed doors. Solitude, once the unquestioned heart of the realm, now found itself isolated, a shining city surrounded by silence. Still, it endured, because Solitude is not just stone and soldiers. It is the memory of the Empire, the idea of Tamriel united, the hope that even in darkness, order can still stand. And for the Legion, that idea is worth bleeding for. So when war comes, and it will, Solitude will not run. Its gates will not fall without a fight. Its crown will not be taken without fire. Because this city remembers something the rebels have forgotten, that Skyrim does not stand alone, and that some wars are fought not for power, but for peace. Windhelm and the Stormcloaks. Windhelm does not whisper, it roars. Ancient stone chiseled by time and war lines its walls. The oldest city in Skyrim and the coldest, both in climate and conviction. To some, Windhelm is a fortress of prejudice. To others, it is the last bastion of true Nordic identity. Here, in the Palace of the Kings, sits Ulfric Stormcloak, Jarl, rebel, and to many, the rightful voice of Skyrim. He does not hide in his halls. He speaks openly, sharply, and with purpose. His words are not polished. They are carved like the statues of Ysgramor that stand in the wind, blunt, weathered, unyielding. Ulfric believes Skyrim has forgotten itself, that it bowed to foreign empires, surrendered its gods, and let the blood of kings run thin. And when he stood in the throne room of Solitude and shouted the High King into death, he did not see treason. He saw a beginning. To Ulfric, the empire died the day it signed the white gold Concordat. To serve the Thalmor to silence Talos, the god born of men, born of Skyrim, was betrayal. Not just to the Nine, but to the ancestors, to the land itself. And so he rose. The Stormcloaks are more than soldiers. They are believers. They are farmers, hunters, smiths, men and women who see the Empire as an outside force that no longer understands Skyrim, let alone deserves to rule it. Their symbol, the Bear of the North, is not just an animal. It is resistance. They do not fight for conquest. They fight to remember who they were before the chains. But Windhelm is no perfect city. In its alleys, Dunmer refugees whisper of hatred. Argonians are forced to the docks, unwanted inside the walls. Even some Nords question Ulfric's vision, wondering if his rebellion includes all of Skyrim, or just the parts he deems worthy. Because pride, when left unchecked, becomes blindness. Still, the loyalty runs deep. Every village that flies the Stormcloak banner does so not out of fear, but out of faith. Faith that Skyrim deserves to rule itself. Faith that Talos still walks among them. Faith that the Empire no longer speaks for Nords, only for itself. Ulfric trains his men with old traditions. He honors the gods in word and deed. He walks the line between war hero and warlord, and makes no apology for it. To some, he is a liberator. To others, a usurper. But to those in Windhelm, he is simply Jarl. Their Jarl, their voice, their war. And when they look south, towards Solitude, they do not see a capital. They see a city that bent the knee. They see a widow wearing a crown forged by compromise. Ulfric does not seek peace, he seeks justice. But justice, when fueled by memory and blood, becomes something else, something dangerous, something unstoppable. The Stormcloaks march not because they are told, but because they believe. In Skyrim, in freedom, in a future not written by empires but by the echoes of shouts long buried in the snow. And so Windhelm waits not with fear, but with fire. Because when war comes, and it will, they will meet it not as rebels, but as sons and daughters of Skyrim. Brothers in battle. Wars begin with banners, but they are fought by brothers. Once, Skyrim stood united against the Aldmeri Dominion. Now it fractures from within, not over land or gold or conquest, but over what it means to be a Nord. There is no single battlefield. The war is fought in taverns and temples, in long halls and frozen roads. One son joins the Stormcloaks. Another wears the armor of the Legion. And in between them stands a mother, a jarl, a farmer, a people torn in half. Some fight for freedom, to cast off the rule of a foreign empire and restore the voice of Talos to the skies. Others fight for unity, to preserve the fragile peace, to prevent Skyrim from tearing itself apart even further. But in the snow, ideals melt, and all that remains is the sound of steel. Stormcloaks believe the Empire betrayed Skyrim. Imperials believe Skyrim would fall without the Empire. Both believe they are protecting something sacred, and both are willing to kill for it. Entire cities stand as symbols of this division. Whiterun, once neutral, is forced to choose. Markarth remembers the Reach uprising and tightens its walls. Riften, ruled by whispers and coin, waits to see which side pays best. The Jarls are not generals, they are hostages of history. Some support Ulfric out of belief, others out of fear, and some simply because they cannot stand the idea of another empire dictating their faith. But no matter the reason, the result is the same. Skyrim is bleeding, and worse, it is forgetting. For every battle won, a village burns. For every banner raised, a child is buried. And in every campfire on the road, someone asks the same question. Is this what Talos would want? But no answer comes, because the divines do not speak in war. Only mortals do, and mortals make mistakes. Legion soldiers speak of discipline, of structure, of a world that can only hold together through law. Stormcloaks speak of heritage, of soul, of a land where the gods are not up for negotiation. Both sides hold truth, and both sides hold bloodied blades. In some towns, families stop speaking. Old friends avoid each other. Priests pray not for victory, but for survival. The Empire sends gold and generals. The Stormcloaks send letters to every hold, reminding them of their past and daring them to choose a future. But there is no future built only on ashes, and so the war drags on. Slow, relentless, bitter. Skyrim's mountains echo not with dragon shouts, but with the screams of its own people. And perhaps that is the cruelest part. This is not a war of invaders. There is no Daedric plot, no monster in the cave, only men and belief and the cost of conviction. Each side sees the other as traitors, but both still bleed the same, still call the land home, still tell their children the same stories of Ysgramor and Sovngarde. They have simply forgotten one thing, that brothers do not always have to agree, but when they draw swords against each other, everyone loses. The Dragonborn's choice. In the heart of the storm, where flags are torn and blood stains the snow, stands one figure neither side can truly claim. You, the Dragonborn, born under a sign few understand, marked by the gods or by fate, carrying the soul of a dragon and the burden of a mortal. You did not start this war, but the path you walk leads directly through it. The Empire sees your strength as a weapon, a tool to restore order, to bind Skyrim tighter to the ruby throne. The Stormcloaks see you as proof that Talos still chooses his own, that Skyrim was right to rebel. But neither side knows your heart. Only you do. And the question is not who deserves to win. The question is, what world do you want to build? Solitude offers unity, stability, the hope of survival in a continent still shaking from the Great War. Windhelm offers freedom, identity, the belief that Skyrim must be ruled by Nords, not distant emperors and forgotten treaties. Both speak truth. Both carry rot. The Empire compromises. It bows to the Thalmor, to buy peace, a peace soaked in shame. But it is still strong, still connected, still capable of holding Tamriel together for now. The Stormcloaks fight for pride, for gods silenced by politics, but they ignore the fractures beneath them, the racism, the fear, the arrogance that poisons even righteous causes, and in the middle of it all stands you who has walked with dragons, who has entered Sovngarde, who has faced Daedra, gods and ghosts, and walked away. No Jarl commands you, no general outranks you, no banner defines you, but still you must choose, because Skyrim listens. And what the Dragonborn supports, others will follow. You can rally the Legion, march under the Red Dragon and secure the throne for a united empire, keeping the gates to oblivion closed and the provinces tethered together for one more era. Or you can raise the Bear of Windhelm, break the chains and restore the cry of Talos to every mountain top, forging a free Skyrim born not of treaties but of thunder. But know this, every choice has a cost. Choose the Empire, and you may save Tamriel, but lose Skyrim's soul. Choose the Stormcloaks, and you may free your homeland, only to light the fire of its isolation. Or walk away, let them burn each other while you chase dragons and destiny. But if you do, remember that apathy is also a choice. And sometimes the world falls not because of villains, but because heroes said nothing. So what will you be? A unifier? A liberator? A wanderer? The gods do not speak. The Jarls shout and bicker. The people suffer. And you shout. And when you do, some Skyrim listens. Before blades were drawn, before cities burned, before banners were planted in blood, there was only a question. A king died, a voice rose, and a nation, ancient and proud, looked in the mirror and saw two faces staring back. This was not a war of conquest, it was a war of memory, of what Skyrim was, and what it could no longer agree to become. Stormcloak or Imperial, treason or tradition, loyalty or liberty. There is no easy answer. Because this war was never just about politics, it was about identity. And while swords may soon decide the fate of holds and thrones, it was words that began it. Words shouted across courtyards, whispered in longhouses, etched into stone, and carried on the cold wind of prophecy. But when the last voice speaks and the last choice is made, what will Skyrim become? That story has yet to be written, and it waits for you. This was Tales of Tamriel. Subscribe now, and never miss the moments that shape legends before the first blade falls.